Hi everyone. This lecture is about field, language for expressing ideas. We've already been introduced to the model of language where there are three simultaneous ways of making meaning, three functions of using language, being field or the subject matter, what's it about, tenor, the interpersonal meanings, the relationships between people involved in the text, and mode, which involves the textual meanings and what kind of text it is. Is it spoken or written or visual? And also how the text is organised and how it hangs together. Today we're going to be talking about grammar, the language system that realises these three metafunctions. In your textbook and in this discussion, you might see different ways of talking about field, tenor and mode. In the Australian curriculum, for example, we talk about field as language that represents experience. This is ideational meaning. The Australian curriculum talks about language for interaction, and that's the interpersonal meaning or tenor. And the Australian curriculum also talks about language resources for forming a text, for organising a text, and that's text forming meaning, textual meaning. So if you see these different names instead of field, tenor and mode, you know that we're talking about the same thing. Ideational meaning draws on the field, interpersonal meaning draws on the tenor, and text forming meaning draws on mode. These three metafunctions are what we call register. So the variables, the different choices we make about field, the choices for tenor and the choices for mode, the way those patterns interact is called register. So within register, let's talk about field. Field is about what's happening, sure, but it involves three different elements: participants, processes and circumstances. We tend to colour these in particular ways just as a convention to help us remember. Participants are red, processes are green and circumstances are blue. It's just a convention. So we use questions, or these probe questions, to help work out what is going on, where are the participants and what are the circumstances. You may remember that you had, in the images module, you had to identify probe questions for making meaning in visuals, and they're the same probe questions for language and for images. The name participants refers to noun groups or things or people. The probe question is who or what's involved. Processes are realised as verbal groups or verbs, and the probe question for a process is what's happening. And in circumstances, the probe question for a circumstance is when, how, where, why, any additional information all around the edge. So when we talk about grammar, grammar is a tool for making meaning. So looking at field and participants, processes, circumstances in a clause is an aspect of grammar. Only one of the aspects we'll be talking about. Now, a clause is a unit of meaning. It's not the same as a sentence. A clause is a special term that refers to a unit of meaning that expresses a message. It typically contains a verb or verb group. So you can have a clause that has only a verb. You can have which is a process. You can have a clause that's got a process and a participant. You can have a clause that's got a process, participant and a circumstance. But we've got usually, but pretty much always at least contains a process. Now you can have one clause in a sentence, two clauses in a sentence, three clauses in a sentence, four clauses in a sentence. So the clause is the unit of meaning we're talking about in grammar. Now let's go back to participants, processes and circumstances, and let's see if we can work out what's happening in this picture from the children's picture book, Rosie's Walk. So we've done our images semiotic analysis, so I can ask you these questions about Rosie's Walk. So what is happening in this picture? Who or what are involved? Are there any further details? When, where, how? When we put the grammar around this, when we turn this meaning into sentences, we're talking about participants, processes and circumstances. So if we say the fox is stalking Rosie the chicken, we can say that the fox is the participant and Rosie the chicken is a participant, and what is happening is stalking. That the fox is stalking Rosie, and we can add further details like in the farmyard or near the mill. They're the extra details. Now let's look at a clause. Early one morning, the boy heard a faint sound far out in the bay. We can use these probe questions to identify what's happening, and who or what's involved, and any further details. So for the most important bit, what is happening, a clause always has a process in it, the green one. The what is happening part is heard. If you imagine a video of this clause, the thing that's happening is hearing. The boy heard. Okay, so heard is the process, what is happening. The red part, who or what's involved, the boy. The boy is the one who's doing the process. And the blue, are there any further details? The probe questions when, where, how. There's plenty of those. So early one morning is when, and far out in the bay is where. And there's another participant there, a faint sound. That answers the question what. So that's another participant for us. So remember, participants are not just people, they're not the characters in a book. They can be things as well. So, as I said, heard is the process. The boy and a faint sound are participants. And early one morning and far out in the bay are circumstances. Now, here's another clause. Let's see if you can do a little thinking of this too. At our beach, at our magic beach, we play in the sand for hours. So the first probe question is to do with the process. What's the thing that's happening? Now you could say, well, what's happening is at our beach, at our magic beach, we play in the sand for hours. That's the whole clause. That's the whole message. What we want to know is the core happening. And that happening is play. What is happening, and that's the process. Now let's have a look at participants. Who or what's involved? Who is playing? We is the who, and therefore we is a participant. Now let's look for any further details, like probe questions, when, where, how. So where are they playing? When are they playing? There we go. Where at our beach, where at our magic beach, where in the sand, and how long? For hours. Or how long for? Sorry, for hours. So they're all circumstances around the edge. So let's go on and have a look at another. This little table here shows the clause in black. Oh, actually, I've put some green on the play, haven't I? But the clause is at the top, then the probe questions are in the middle, and then the participant, process or circumstance is underneath that. We call the participant, process or circumstance a function. Now in your textbook, Grammar and Meaning, you'll see that they're using a similar table. So you can complete the activities to do with participants, processes and circumstances. And then in the following lectures, I'll move on and tell you more about participants, more about processes and more about circumstances. There's one lecture on each. Okay, have fun.